Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're all well. I know we're interviewing three people today, which is it's always a handful, balancing different people, but we've all got the same subject that we're leading on, so it's going to be very interesting conversation. So, Mervyn, I'm going to come to you first of all, and I'm just going to get you to set the scene for today's podcast.
Sure, Paul. Well, as you know, I've been a guest on your podcast in the past. I've been very much a fan of your podcast series. I have to say, I'm very happily listening to most of what you broadcast. And yeah, really, I thought this was a good time for ESTA to get involved with the podcast series, because we really are very keen at the moment in developing our international side of things. And the reason I thought this would be a good idea was because we've got a show coming up, a global trade show coming up at the end of March. And I was really quite excited to have some interesting people on this podcast to just discuss what's going on in the world, what's going on in the European and global markets, and of course, what's going on in the UK market. And hopefully try and persuade people out there that there's, we're not completely an island just on our own. There are plenty of opportunities for partnerships and for trade and opportunities out there in the marketplace. So, yeah, and I just thought your podcast was such a wonderfully marvelous podcast series that we would be absolutely good idea to start with you as the key person.
Okay, well, thank you. We're very proud to be supporting ESTA. As you know, you're our certification partners. We have a good partnership with you regarding what we do with the learning, and that's what excites me. We're learning and bringing new experts. I'm looking around the room. There's quite a few grey hairs. There's a lot of grey-haired people in our industry, but we need the young coming into that industry, and that's one thing I like to encourage. So thank you for that introduction. And as I say, we're very proud to be leading this with you today. So thank you for arranging this. I'm going to come to Tony first of all to give us some background. So what we do, we like to give background to our listeners are mainly energy experts from around the world. So I'm trying to give them knowledge and spreading knowledge around the world with this podcast. So for the benefit of our audience, Tony, if you could give us some background into yourself in the energy industry and maybe your origin story, what led you into this?
Well, I suppose I came into it by osmosis, really, I suppose, and I've been involved with business media for about 40 years. And originally, I was involved with construction. And then from construction, you started to get to sustainability and efficiency. And from that into waste and so on. And from that into energy. And okay, I've kind of abbreviated that quite a lot, but that's kind of how the passage of time went. And I think and I kind of went from media to then exhibitions, and even through COVID, exhibitions still seemed to be, they were subdued, but they still had a brand there, And but I found that exhibitions have been a marvelous way for markets to develop properly, because you can actually see and feel and smell the industry very, very clearly. And so I've become probably more involved with exhibitions than anything else. And then what I also found going along, particularly in the sort of sustainability sector, was that this wasn't, we weren't an island, and I started going to international exhibitions and I started talking to international companies and suddenly realized that, well, we shouldn't be just talking internally meaning the UK. We should be speaking to everybody vast and various. And part of that was at the time when I started this, the UK was in the European Union. And so that was one thing. But even at that point, I was speaking to companies in North America, South America, Asia, Africa. And so realized that all these companies all have the same job to do. They happen to have a different address, they happen to have different governments, but actually, ultimately, everybody was trying to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that I noticed that, which increased as time went on, was that companies were, the supply chain to all these companies was anywhere and everywhere. So far from the UK being an island, we were just one particular chess piece in a whole line of different chess pieces, and we were all working together.
Mm.
And so the thing has evolved very much. And so when I go over to Italy, there's a kind of different way they handle things, I suppose, in terms of the event, and the people kind of deal with exhibitions in a slightly different way. But actually, the topics are all the same. Everything is actually the same. Everybody's looking for energy efficiency. Everybody's looking to try and reach net zero. Everybody's trying to reach zero uh, uh, greenhouse gases by 2050. So all the topics become the same. You just happen to be on an aeroplane before you get to it. So
Yeah.
it's become a fascinating market, and this is not slowing down; it's speeding up.
Yeah.
The involvement from different countries and so on is speeding up, not slowing down. So I don't know whether I've answered your question now, but
You have. You have that. I want to touch on one thing there, because I always say we all speak different languages, but we all speak the same language of reducing carbon.
Yeah.
Well, I always go on about kilowatt hours, carbon emissions, and saving our planet, which is
Yeah.
really the whole theme of what this
It
podcast
is.
really addresses.
It is. I mean, it evolves.
Yeah.
The topics evolve, but they evolve everywhere in the same way, and the problems become the same.
And do you think lockdown has accelerated it? You was doing this already before, traveling from A to B. But do you think lockdown and the likes of Zoom? We're talking on Zoom today. This would never have happened before, would it?
Has it? I think it's introduced new technologies. I mean, for example, we are, us four are having a meeting like this, and I don't think really 3 years ago we were typically doing that. We might have done a phone call or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this has come about because of COVID. I think people are more conscious now of car emissions in particular, vehicle emissions in particular. I think that's a much bigger topic now. In London, and I'm going to say this as if nobody knows about this, but in London we're extending the ULEZ zone to outer London as well. And there's some political pressure around that, but by and large, it will go through, and so it should. By the way, it should happen, and because we've all got to start behaving about vehicles and about emissions, we can't ignore it. We've got to get better at it. So, I don't know whether COVID was particularly instrumental in that. I don't know, but certainly through that time we've become more conscious that we have to achieve this. I don't know whether you guys felt this, but during COVID, we were all allowed out for an hour, a precious hour a day or whatever it was at the time. And I remember going out during the day and saying to my wife, actually, this is quite nice, isn't it? You walk down the street, there's no cars pumping fumes in your nose. I said, oh, this is really cool. I could kind of get used to this. You can't go on, but it's actually quite nice. But I think we all became very much aware that we were polluting the atmosphere around us, and it can't go on.
I lived near the Thames, and I used to walk along the Thames, and we suddenly become green flag where we lived because it was so clean.
Yeah.
I walked out to Mulberry Harbour. I thought we was in another country. I thought it was cool because the grass, the sand was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then you'd look up, it's a plane.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen a plane for a couple of weeks.
Seen a plane. And we think about it, And now we're so aware of it. So I think it has come about. And I don't know whether COVID was particularly a part of it, but certainly it's changed since COVID, and there seems to be a renewed urgency. Without question, there's a renewed urgency since COVID. I think perhaps because we've tasted it, and now really people do want to push on with this, and I think it's going to go faster.
I just want to touch on one thing. You mentioned you was involved with construction. What is your bias as such regarding that? What are you, mechanical, electrical, fabric, or what is the?
No, and not at all. I kind of fell into it accidentally, really. I went into. I studied law, which was my background, and so that's where I came at it from. And then I went to work for a publisher, and they said, well, I went into work for a magazine called Building, which is a very old traditional construction magazine. But it's a kind of involved magazine, very technical, but quite political too. And so I got into that, and then into the sales and marketing side of it. And then it's kind of moved from that point. So no, I'm afraid I'm not a trained engineer at all. What I've what I know about it is picked up along the way, really.
It's interesting that the media world, your training has come into this industry,
Yeah,
which
has,
we need that as engineers. I like the mix of that. You know,
Yeah.
we're all pulling in the same direction. So I'm going to come over. We're going to go back in time a little bit now because I'm going to start all over again with Miguel. So sorry for leaving you to the last point. So Miguel, can you tell us about your background and your origin story?
Yes. Yeah, it's very fine to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for sharing this with ESTA. I'm a member of ESTA for a long time myself, and so I really appreciate what Mervyn is doing in trying to internationalize and this step forward. So, well, I started as a consultant, so in Accenture. And my first client was electricity company. That's why I'm in the energy sector in a way. So it was EDP, EDP in Portugal, and so then I grow in that industry, and I like it very, very much. Later I was starting also Deloitte Consulting in Portugal, so I was one of the management team. Was in charge of Iberia, Portugal, Spain for all energy sector. And then I was recruited by one of my clients, which was oil and gas corporation called Galp Energia. It's a big oil corporation, oil and gas. Their idea was to create like a like a one-stop shop for all energy solutions. But soon they were back to the oil and gas, because oil and gas was becoming so expensive during the 2008, 2000, before that, 2005, 2006. And then I thought it was my time to go because I was recruited as innovation director. I was reporting to the CEO of the corporation. It was a really great time I had there. I learned a lot. It was a global organization. But for me, it was not about oil and gas anymore. So I thought it was my time to starting the other solutions on the green agenda. And mainly the first one I took was the energy efficiency. So that was where I started Self Energy Group. So back 2006, we were one of the first ESCOs, energy service companies in Europe back that time. There was some in US, some in Germany, but most of the countries didn't have any ESCOs yet. So we help in a way. I was part of an interesting group called ESCO Europe. There were like events, and that's the importance, like was saying about these events, that we had this event every year about, we call it ESCO Europe. And we had this group that was mainly directed by the European Commission regarding the energy efficiency. But this group was like 10, 12 people that in a way we helped to shape the industry in Europe from the different countries, create the most interesting regulations in the beginning. Even the energy certificates came from that first groups in the beginning, the EPC contracts, the EVO, so EVO standards, all the standards of the industry came from that group in the beginning, and that was like the development of the company. I also, of course, came into along is even as the name you think about Self Energy, and I was always focusing decentralized solutions. So I never thought the solution, the main solution for the energy sector, were to be a centralized solution, even if it's a solar farm or if it's a natural gas station, a plant, whatever. So centralized solutions will never be, in my view, will never be the ultimate solution. So you will have to combine that with the decentralized services, and in order even to involve more the people, to have people involved in all the processes, in all the efficiency you may want. So it was, for me, was clear, even because my background is computer science, so I'm engineering on computer science. Of course, Then I have my MBA in Barcelona in IES, and some post-graduation in INSEAD in France. But most of my organization, my mind organization, is about systems and about networks and about how these networks will connect each other, and how they will face even to become like an internet like we have today, and makes possible for us to speak right now, and all the telecoms that was developed. And all of this was done because of decentralized systems, was not because of centralized systems. So anyway, so that's where I started Self Energy. Then from Self Energy, I become also a business angel, and I supported the development of different startups. I'm now supporting companies regarding green hydrogen, for instance, or like solar flexible panels, which is like the new solar that will appear in our cities. Even battery storage, like a UK company called Pure Drive, that's really now flying, which is good. So yeah, so I'm in this sector for the already very deeply connected, and I'm really think what matters is the ecosystem. So it's not going to be one solution that will solve everything. It will be a combination of different technologies, different also regulations, different policies, and different associations like ESTA to make the nodes to connect to each other. And so that's what I believe, and that's where I am in this journey now with ESTA, and so I'm glad. I will be in Italy, so I hope. I'm normally like invited speaker in some of these conferences, and I've been in different parts of the world, and I agree in a way. I agree that it's more or less people speak about the same subjects, but normally not with the same eyes or the same kind of background, and that is really interesting to understand. And I think even, for instance, this what's happened right now with this war in Ukraine, and these Russia oil and gas, but mainly the natural gas pipes that was really finalized for finished for Europe. So we're not going to use that pipes anymore soon. And so that makes a huge change on things like security of supply. So things like sustainability were not on the top of agenda anymore for some time. So people were start thinking first on, can I keep my lights on? Can I have reserves for the winter? And now that we've gone through that, and that was this winter, was this one that was the most difficult to cross. Now I think we're going to have another capacity to come back to the sustainability agenda. But I really think we had like to face a kind of waiting, or I don't know what's the right word. But we had to get like a kind of a pause to think if we are or not able to have security of supply with renewable energy and with the sources that we have right now with also LNG. But and that I think is a very interesting conversation to have as well. So energy efficiency is even more important, because if you can save more, you don't have to buy more. That is,
Exactly.
and you can have more reserves for the future. So never was so important to be efficient as it is now.
Yeah. And you mentioned your energy services, what you're involved with your existing company and the new startups. Are they what sort of, and you mentioned centralized systems, but you take them down to building level, don't you?
Yep. Yes, that's where I is the building, or like the neighborhood or the industrial park level.
Right.
So things that I help to develop here in Portugal, but also in UK, is things like renewable energy communities, where you can like share your energy with your neighbors and your access. You are not at home during one day, and you can share the energy that you from your solar panels. interesting in like a residential or a building, but if it is even more interesting in if you think about industrial parks or ports or airports, where everything can be shared between different systems and different services. And so that's the kind of ecosystem I'm speaking and I'm talking about. If each one of that ecosystems can be self-sustainable by themselves, if they have their own renewable energy sources, if they have batteries to source when that's not available, or even green hydrogen when you need it for the top up on your industrial processes, then you will leave the grid much more prepared for solving the main security of supply things. So at each level, so at each microgrid, each building, each community will have to take care about their energy services and their energy efficiency.
How do we deal with the major organizations that seem to be able to fund all this, and they're organized, they've got employed energy management teams, maybe, down to the small organizations, the SMEs of this world? How do we fill those gaps regarding the technology availability? The availability of the technology is there, but it's the funding of those. How are we going to address all that?
Yeah, that's the good thing of ESCOs. And normally you are a kind of agnostic on the size of the company. You are providing a service, and you provide the service for the SME or for the big company. If your service is hot water, or if it's cold water, or if it's steam, you will produce the steam, and you generate that for the full needs on that area. Okay, and that happens. In UK, for instance, there are that kind of examples. In Greenwich, for instance, there is ENGIE is dealing a very good big project called Peninsula, the energy in Greenwich in London, and in fact they have a big energy center that is supporting the shopping center, but also the residential areas with hot water and cold water as well. So it is possible to come to a solution where you will involve all sizes of companies, even because they will be beneficial for each other, for the different kinds of profiles normally you have on them. There are like SMEs that work 24 hours that work very well near a big factory that works 9 to 5. And then the profiles of consumption of them will be different, and they will be matching with the full system integrated. And so this is the kind of solutions. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of software. Like you talk about energy management systems, and it's true. This is going to be there's a lot of IT and a lot of. I normally say that you see, we are the last energy is the last big industry. So after the telecoms have becoming decentralized and totally disrupted with the mobile phone, after the computers, the IT has been disrupted with our PC, our personal computer. Even after the banks have been disrupted with self-banking, and everybody now do their own banking at home. Now we are the last ones to do that. So we are still in a way linked to a grid. But in my view, that's not going to happen too much more time, because you can, in a way, you will use the grid as your backup, as you use the backbone of the telecom. But most of your systems will be local. So you can have a solar, you can have a battery in your industrial park, or in your neighborhood, or in your house, or in your building. And you will deal with your energy services mostly by yourself. And that will be the most efficient way in the circular economy. It's not... Even, to be honest, I think there will be very interesting things to think about is what we're going to do with the natural gas pipes. I don't know. That is going to be a very interesting talk about it, because I really think in 50 years is going to be something that we don't need it at all. Even before.
In your opinion, is that globally? You feel that's going to be the case?
True. Yeah, that is the good thing, is the technology that is appearing. You see, it's going to be available globally, and there will be countries, even the countries where, for instance, natural gas pipes and natural gas grids are not well developed right now. like Africa, like South America, like some parts of Asia, they will be the first ones to step on these microgrids, and they are already the first ones to have all a full electrical kind of system where they will pop up with some green hydrogen or some other solutions. Of course, natural gas has a space. Okay, I don't see there's always a space for that in the future. What I'm saying is we have to prepare for a world where that's not the backbone anymore. That's going to be a different kind of models. If we want to get off, and if we want, like you said, to reduce the CO2 emissions, then we need to think about what's going to happen after natural gas and after oil, and that's what we should start thinking right now.
Yeah, totally agree. So thank you for building your background. It's really good. There's loads of questions. Normally I'd be firing you with loads of questions, but you're lucky today. So I want to throw a question into the whole room here, and even yourself, Mervyn. I'd like you to come on to this. So I want to talk about your challenge. So Miguel, you've been talking about challenges there, and so as Tony was alluding to them. So where do you think our challenges are, and individually, you know? So I come to you first, Tony.
It's funny actually, because I was thinking as Miguel was speaking there, is behavior change really, because if you look at what happens at COP26 and COP27, you know, by and large, and it's good that they speak about it and they keep it on the agenda, but not a lot happens really. There's not a lot of movement. So the big responsibility is on you and me, you know, and that's where it's going to be changing. And I think when I go around and you know you see your friends and you see your family and so on, you can see gradually that that behaviors are changing. Children in particular, you know, that we bring up children to start thinking about energy efficiency and saving resources, and these are important steps. So it's not about the grand things that we can do. It's also about the things we do, each of us, each and every one. And Miguel, I think you mentioned about Africa as well. We have quite a lot of to the show. We have quite a lot of visitors from a lot of the African states, and the interesting thing about them is that a lot of them are not on the grid at all. A lot of those countries, sorry, not, whole countries not on the grid. I mean, there'll be 50% on the grid or 60% on the grid or something.
Yes, less than that.
So, and so what they're doing is they're hopping over the whole carbon energy thing and going straight to renewable energy. And frankly, there's no point in building an infrastructure for an energy source that's not going to be there, as Miguel says, in 50 years' time. So they're building an infrastructure of having renewable energy, and so it's coming. We just got to be more confident. And it was Miguel, I don't know whether you're aware, but a few months ago there was more panic about the Ukrainian war and what the Russians were doing, and so one of the solutions was that we should go back to the idea of shale gas. Do you remember this, Mervyn?
I saw that.
And I was horrified, but this idea lasted about 15 minutes, I think, and then we all realized that this was
a bit more, but yeah, hopefully.
But you know, we realized this was a completely ludicrous idea. Why build an infrastructure for shale gas when you're already 3/4 of the way through building an infrastructure for wind energy? Just continue with the infrastructure for wind energy. You know, why not? And solar and so on. So I think
they'll be precious. They'll be precious.
Of course, you know, and it's not going to be easy. It's like we've got a mayor here in London who's just said the ULEZ zone is coming out to Greater London, and it's not easy. And he's getting, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily a supporter of him, but I'm saying what he's done is take on a difficult question and made a big decision, which is a very brave decision, and I think it's the right one, which is to try and can persuade people to move across to more efficient sources. And so I think behavior change is a big one, and I think Miguel, you mentioned that.
Alleluia to the behavior changes. Paul knows and everyone else knows, that that's one of ESTA's key projects, is getting behavior change into the system, into the processes, albeit in our case more towards the commercial, non-domestic side rather than the residential. But yeah, I mean, Paul, at the beginning of this introduction, did quite rightly say, Mervyn, we don't want any criticism of government or slagging off of government or anything else to do with government. All I was going to say, and obviously it is relevant, unfortunately, in my job, because one of my jobs is in trying to influence governments, trying to help derive policy, looking at what the government is doing in policy terms. And this is global, because obviously countries are doing things differently. Some countries very differently. Obviously, in some countries in Africa and other states are not necessarily as democratic as others. Clearly, China, India, Russia, some of the major countries of the world have got issues around the whole issue around decarbonisation, net zero, and any other target in that sector, in that space. Obviously, personally, UK is my main focus. That's where I'm based. That's the day job for me, and things are getting a little better, and I'm happier with broad direction now, having had a long period of time without really a lot of activity, which was frustrating. And the trading side, yeah, back to the discussion that Tony mentioned at the beginning around we're not an island. Well, hopefully we're beginning to take a view that there is still a lot of international trade out there. Energy efficiency is a global activity. It's not specific to UK. And if the view is taken, sometimes our politicians seem to think we are still global leaders in technology and solutions. You've got to get those solutions sold, to my mind, good old-fashioned legwork around exhibitions. I just had to very quickly pick up something Tony said around the virtual world, and again, my day job around, you know, getting ESTA involved in trade shows. I struggle, I have to say, in the COVID pandemic period, I really struggled to find a piece of software that in any way mirrored the good old-fashioned trade show activity that obviously I know that IEG support with shows like Ecomondo and Key Energy. So yeah, I watched several versions of software where avatars were floating around virtual exhibition stands, and we never quite mirrored, or I know that Key Energy or Ecomondo did try and run a virtual session. I think the only ironical thing about shows, and I'll go back to when my very first trade show I attended when I started running ESTA back in 2019 around June time. I think, Tony, it was where I met you for the first time.
Yeah.
I think there were lots of posters on the wall saying we have 11 years left to save the planet. I did remember saying to a few stand holders, well, actually, guys, should we really be driving, coming by train, coming by plane to the show, and should we have all the carbon implied by having a physical trade show? So it's a bit of a trade-off. I mean, obviously, if you've got buyers coming from around the world, and you're quite right, when I went to Ecomondo in 2019, also lots of buyers from all over the world. Well, obviously, they're all going to be mainly coming by plane, obviously, most of them. And you've always got that trade-off with, you need the trade show activity to generate solutions, generate activity, but equally, reality is, how much longer can we be doing that sort of trade show? I mean, look at what happens in the UK. I mean, the politicians get really harassed for flying. I think the Prime Minister flew, I don't know, about 200 miles the other day to attend a meeting in the UK, and he flew when the train was a perfectly good opportunity to, to take. As I say, I don't want to politicize things. The only thing I was going to finish on the politics side is, yeah, the policies all around the world are radically different. In the UK, they want a lot more private sector solution than state-driven solution. We've got the 90 billion target private sector investment for 3 years. Not totally sure how and where that's coming from. But trade shows, good old-fashioned trade shows, certainly one way of generating that private sector investment that they need.
I think as well, as said earlier, that the point is the technologies are the same. What the solutions we find in the UK will not be unique to the UK. They will be exactly the same as they are elsewhere, particularly around Europe, because countries of a kind of similar size, maybe slightly bigger, condensed populations and all the rest of it. So we have the same. We start with the same platform. If you look at Italy is a good case in point. I think there's 62 million people in Italy. There's 66 million here. It's about I think it's 90% the same land space. It's a modern, progressive country as is the UK. I still think we are. So, they had pretty much the same issues as we have. They produce, by and large, the same waste as the UK does, pretty much the same per person. So a lot of the issues are very much the same. They're in the European Union, so and by the way, still, if you look at our rules and regulations and everything we're doing, they're all run from the European Union because they have been in the past. So we've still got all those rules and regulations. So we're all in a similar position. So they're looking for the same solutions we're looking for, and that's why when you go there, you get critical mass of solutions to the problems that you see. So the supply chain is there. That's where the supply chain is coming from, particularly for the UK. One difference is that they tend to manufacture a lot of their own solutions, whereas we don't here. We tend to import solutions certainly for the energy transition issue. So I think that's why I think getting to an exhibition like Key is really important to actually see a critical mass of solutions, because otherwise I don't see where we're getting them from here in the UK. I don't see how we're finding our solutions at the moment. And there seems to be a reluctance to, and again, I don't want to over politicize this about Brexit or not Brexit, but we seem to be reluctant to engage with en masse other countries who have got the solutions we're looking for. We seem to be very reluctant to do that. And we're delighted to get Miguel coming out.
Yeah.
But Miguel, if you don't mind me saying, you're not actually coming from the UK, or you're not British coming from the UK. We haven't got anybody.
I think
who
he's
wants
honorary. He's an honorary Brit.
He is, and we're delighted to have him. But my point is that Miguel's coming, but talking to British people about coming out to experience new technologies and to see what the solutions are. I had somebody say, "Well, we've got to sort out the problems in the UK first." Well, this is what we're trying to do.
There's a lot of pretentious. There's a lot of pretentious in our view that we are leading in some way, or we're always ahead of everyone else. And I don't.
We're not. And
No.
they don't, and in Europe, they don't miss us. They're just saying, look, here we are. We have a big platform. We have lots of solutions. We have thousands of companies. Come and take a look, I mean, we're not, I'm not actually here, and Miguel's not going over as an exhibitor. We've not, we're providing a platform whereby we take people over and actually, provide comfort, hotels and transport and everything else, so they can see what these are. And they no, we'd rather stay in the UK and see nothing at all. I don't know.
I mean, in theory, all I've said is I happily will look. I'm flag waving for UK in the sense that I'm happy to take a stand space there and just promote UK where we can. And just be a little bit of a home for those UK people. From memory, I remember 2019. I don't think, to be fair, I met a lot of fellow Brits in that show.
No.
Lots of Germans, lots of people from
Belgians,
all around
Dutch, Europe. French.
That's got to change. We need to try and just make that change somehow. I mean, I don't know what the answer is.
No.
True. Let me just jump in because
yes, please, because we need to hopefully lighten it up a little bit.
The international view, yes.
yeah. No. Also on a positive side. So in a way, I'm a business angel in some UK companies, and I'm supporting some of the companies I've been supporting in the past. I solutions build it in UK, and in a way they have not yet gone all the way to the export area, but they are on the way. And I think the main challenge, it's like you said, Tony, it's global, to be honest. Of course it is. And there will be countries that will benefit from having a good industrial support, but also a good kind of environment to test their solutions. And I really think UK as an interesting set of regulations that always has made the UK ahead, even of continental Europe, in a lot of subjects. For instance, demand response is one of them, and everything regarding virtual power plants, even battery storage is another part, which it's much more developed. EV charging is much more developed in UK. Of course, there is the Nordics. The Nordics are the top one in EVs. but UK compared with continental Europe, it's far ahead. And so there's plenty of technologies and technology companies. I can speak about two or three that I'm supporting directly, but I know there's more. And I've with this like hat of business angel, I've been challenged by several companies for investment, and I think there is really good talent in UK for these solutions to be used. Another way, in terms of international, it's true that you will have to adapt the solutions to different places, different environment. And one of the interesting things that's happening right now, it's for instance, for the green hydrogen area, we have been really, until now, we have been looking like for Germany, for instance, as the big hub for industrial, because they have the cheaper energy available in Europe from the Russia pipeline. That was exactly for that they were flourishing for the last 20 years, 30 years in their industry, because it was like the cheaper energy for anyone. Right now, that's not the case anymore. It's over, and it's over for all. So it's not going to happen again. So they are having LNG right now. They were really, really good on transforming their capacity for buying liquefied natural gas, but that's double the cost, and it's not sustainable. So it's not going to be the same thing. And for instance, for producing green hydrogen, they just don't have the resources. The green hydrogen resources, which like sunshine and wind, are in Iberia or in the south of Italy or Greece. That's where the green hydrogen will be produced. Potentially Scotland with the wind offshore, or some Nordics with some hydro, but not in the Central Europe. Central Europe will buy green hydrogen, will not produce. And so the change, the challenge will be, how can you maintain a really I'll say kind of leadership in manufacturing without having cheap energy anymore? And my guess, for instance, is maybe you will change the places where you're going to have the industry. So it's going to be easier to relocate some industrial players to some of these places like Iberia or Greece or Italy than to transport green hydrogen to that places. Green hydrogen transportation is a very highly cost. People don't understand yet what they are talking about, but its green hydrogen was not made to be transported. It was made to be produced and used locally where it belongs, because that's where it's going to be more efficient and more. And so these things, these challenges, these world challenges are changing also the way Europe has to face, mainly Europe. And of course, Europe right now has also understood that their own resources are just renewables. They don't have natural gas enough to do anything. They don't have coal enough even to do a security of supply. So they really have to rely on renewable energy. And so they will have to lead, the same as UK. They will have to lead. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed. I was speaking in an event 2 weeks ago in Liverpool, and there was a really back for the blue hydrogen kind of scheme in Liverpool, and the HyNet, which is like maintaining the natural gas as the base carrier for all energy for the next 20 years, instead of trying to jump to the green hydrogen where everybody is going. And so sometimes I think there will be a lot of pressures, like you say, the shale gas, but it's not the shale gas, just will be also these players of natural gas that will want to keep the pipes live. And so there will be, and so I just want to understand that the challenges we have ahead is we used to have three types of energy and or three main sources. One was oil and was for transportation, and we used the oil in all our cars, all our jet fuel for and every ships. So that was transportation, was all about oil. Then we have the industry, and the heating was natural gas. And then we have electricity, was mainly for the buildings and for and for our appliances and for keep the lights on. So right now we are transforming the natural gas and into electricity part of it and into green hydrogen, and we are transforming the oil from the transportation also into electricity, and all of that has to become renewable. And we don't have free grids. So for doing this, in fact, we needed like 3 times the grid we have now, 3 times the renewable, not 3 times, 3 times electricity we have, but electricity is not renewable yet. So renewables in UK, for instance, is less than 50%. In Iberia is a little bit more right now, but we are still far away from a full mix of renewables in our grid. So electricity doesn't mean sustainable. Electricity, it can mean that you, for instance, you will be better, you're going to be better off a good efficient boiler than using a heat pump in your grid if your grid is running on coal. So we have to be careful about all these subjects. So the main challenges is how can we decarbonize at the same time the transportation, the industrial and the heating and the electricity sector as well. And so this is where we are really facing the big challenges. And I think we have the technology, but like Tony said, there's a lot of behavior change, has to be one by one. So houses will become electrical, houses will become self-sustainable with renewables and batteries on source and EV charging and their own EV. And that's the first step. But then you have to have our cities, our buildings with LED lighting, all with systems that can manage these efficiently, all these EV chargers. And the EV chargers have to charge with renewable energy, renewable electricity. You can't charge an EV with coal. Doesn't make any sense. So we have to be careful with these kind of things, because then we're going to be mixing. There is a new regulation, for instance, that happened in Europe last week in the European Union, which says that, for instance, for green hydrogen production, you have to have additionality of renewable sources, which means that to produce green hydrogen, you can't use the same solar farms that you have now, because the solar farms that you have now is for the electricity grid. And so you can't start competing green hydrogen with the others. So you have to build new ones. And that's what makes sense. So we have to be careful to build each one of these challenges all together without harming. And sorry to be so long, but this is a big challenge we have ahead.
You're giving us the facts here and
Yeah,
all the different variables. And I think people need to understand all these different variables, because, you know, for me, one of the things I'm sort of like, my head is spinning. Thank you, Miguel. I'm like thinking about all these different things. But you're right. You haven't said anything unknown to all of us. One of my biggest things I always talk about really is collaboration, and we can only get from A to B if we collaborate. And I'm going to sort of go back to Tony here, because you talked about the different countries and exhibitions. I want to sort of bring it back to that sort of. So who is leading the charge regarding exhibitions and getting this collaboration? Because when I go to an exhibition, that's one thing I feel when I'm there. You talk to different people, you talk to your competitors, you know, people that you used to work with that now may be working for competitors. And there's that in that little circle of that exhibition hall, you forget about the fight outside that circle, and you become one and you start working together and you collaborate. So who's leading that? What should we have more exhibitions? What's the strategy there?
I think first of all, I think the Germans. It would be my quick answer to you would be the Germans.
Right.
You know, and they're so efficient at everything, aren't they?
Of course they are.
And so
even their football, but we won't go there.
Exactly. So I think they do. I don't know whether you need more exhibitions. Probably, if anything, you need less, but you need the right ones, and you need better ones sometimes. Exactly. And so that's what you need, and you need comprehensive ones. And I think that's what you need. And you need to, for example, I've spoken to Mervyn quite often about the content at Key, you know, but we do have energy efficiency there, for example, but you need a show which is big enough to show solar, wind, you know, city sustainability, hydrogen, and so that you can see energy efficiency within the mix. So if we're trying to get energy transition, you need to see the whole topic, and energy efficiency stands above that. And we've got to become more efficient with everything that we do. I mean, we've even got to be more efficient with renewable energy. You know, it's not going away. So I think the answer to the first part of your question is that the Germans are very good at this, and they're very good at pulling everything together, and very good at putting on an event big enough to be and comprehensive enough to cover all the topics, so you can get all the solutions in one place. They're very good at doing that. Because I do an Italian show, I'm bound to say this, but the Italians are very good at it too. They're very good, and what the Italians do very well is they're very good at making sure that the European Union and their own government take part. So when you go there, you can see that the European Union will be talking about compliance. They'll be talking about the new legal platforms which are being put together by the European Union and by Italian governments and so on, that all commercial and industrial companies will have to follow, all individuals will have to follow, all local authorities will have to follow. And so you can see you can see the whole topic in the rounds going around the whole show. So I think the Europeans are very good at putting on events which involve everybody and all the rules and all parts of the supply chain. And the government is in that supply chain. The European Union is in that supply chain. Lawyers are in that supply chain. So, you know, and they're very good at making sure that all those parts take part. And there's a massive shows in Germany. One is called EFAT. And I don't know if Miguel or Mervyn have ever been to that, but this is it's a monster of a show. You know, there's 300,000 people go to this show, and it's just, you know, but it's, and Mervyn was saying, you know, we have to kind of, it's a bit of a trade-off, because we're saying these are such big events, but actually you need the big event to make sure you can get all the solutions in one place.
Yeah.
We don't need an exhibition on every corner. We just need to make sure that the events we do have are big enough and comprehensive enough to answer all the questions. Germans are very good, Italians are very good, and North Americans are very good at it.
I don't know if I can just very quickly interject there, though, Tony, just say one quick thing on this. I feel really strongly, and I think it's the right thing, because Key Energy clearly up to now has been part of Ecomondo, which has been that big show, major show. I do think it's really good that there's this big focus around energy in all of its components. You know, obviously, I'm pleased that energy efficiency is an active part of that solution. I will continue to shout loudly as loudly as anyone will hear me. Energy efficiency is a supply issue. It's a security issue. It's the first fuel, because unfortunately we have got certain people who don't seem to quite get that mission. And the fact you've got energy efficiency next to all the other solutions, hydrogen, renewables, solar, whatever, and battery.
It should be.
It's very important, and I think that's great. That's
it
why
is. What we did find actually up until last year, and if I'm just to kind of explain what we've done here, but because Key Energy grew up alongside a big event called Ecomondo, which was a circular economy event. And it kind of grew up as a kind of, well, you should think about energy as well, right? But of course, energy has become, out of 30 halls, Key Energy was just 2. And it became, but energy and energy transition and energy efficiency became as big a topic as the circular economy. So what we've had to do is separate it away so that we can give Key Energy its own oxygen, if you like. If we can give it its own purpose and its own its own comprehensive coverage. And so now we've gone from 2 halls to 14 in 4 months. I mean, it's astonishing. So anyway, that's what's happening. And it's got its own front door, and it's, you know, it's got, and all the content is about the energy transition and the energy topics we just discussed about hydrogen and energy efficiency, batteries, and so on. So I think that's, you know, that's part of the drive that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, that we've got to this point with transition.
I haven't seen the UK shows, Paul, necessarily attracting quite that international audience. That's the interesting issue. Back to being an island, you know, a little bit of that island mentality where we're not necessarily attracting. But that's just that's a personal opinion. Obviously, I only go to so many shows these days. But
So it's come to that time in the podcast where I always like to put you guys on the spot because we need to give back to the industry and the people listening to this and the experts. We need to be educating them. So I call it a takeaway. So is there a takeaway that we can give? I'm going to come to you first, Tony, because you're smiling at me. Where now you're laughing. You've got something, I'm sure. Is there a takeaway that we can give to our listeners today regarding the energy experts?
I would think about the supply chain and how international that supply chain is. I think that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter about Brexit. Don't get distracted by Brexit. It's irrelevant in this case. Whatever it is, your solution will be partly, I don't know how big, but your solution will be partly in Europe, partly overseas. And so just engage with the rest of the world more.
Brilliant. I like that. Collaboration, engage. It's out there. We're all speaking these. I've said it before. We all speak in different languages. We're all on that same page, aren't we? And Miguel, what would be your takeaway?
I would maybe people to think about ecosystem and about how solutions will have to match each other. And so exactly what Tony said, some of the solutions will be in different countries, in different players. Some of them will be next door. But what matters is to understand how they will come together to help decarbonize and reduce the costs and increase the efficiency of each system. And so thinking about ecosystem is not thinking that solar will solve everything or green hydrogen will solve everything. Yeah. It's about trying to understand that we'll have to have like renewable heat, for instance, a new thing that people are not thinking about. But if we want to have heat, it will not be only heat pumps. We'll have to have renewable heat combined with heat pumps. We don't have electricity grid enough to have transportation and hold our system of heating at the same place. So we have to combine solutions. And that's what you can get in these exhibitions and in these fairs, is that you can find out the different kind of solutions that can match your ecosystem. So each ecosystem will be different. And because of that, solutions have to be different as well. And it's good for you to go away and see where they are.
Yeah. And Mervyn, I'm not going to leave you out on this one. We need ESTA to give us a takeaway on this subject of exhibitions and collaboration, etc.
I'm even more passionate about collaboration than I've been trying to put so many different collaborative projects together. Unfortunately, some of those lost a lot of steam because of the pandemic. Ironically, it took people's minds away from working together because they were all worrying about making sure their own little bit of the piece of the pie was kept going. Key takeaways from me, absolutely collaboration. Keep an open mind. Forget the politics at a trade show. I mean, poor Tony knows that I've been badgering him around. Can I get the Department for International Trade to go to the show to help wave the flag for the UK? But actually, I'm going to say, forget about all that. Let's just get people, like-minded people together in the 14 halls. You told me it was 10. I'm certain you did.
Yeah, I did. Actually, I was wrong. It's huge. Yeah.
So let's get all these people, all those people in those 14 halls, working together, talking together, keeping in contact with each other. I mean, I think the key takeaway, to be fair, I have already mentioned, which I still think, which is so important, and it is important, is that energy efficiency is as much a supply issue as any of the other supply issues. Nuclear, all the different, nuclear hasn't been mentioned yet in this discussion. Obviously, UK is focusing on nuclear. Let's get energy efficiency as really important as all those other supply issues out there, because it absolutely is. It's got to be regarded as the first fuel, really, really strongly. If we can keep that message singing out, I think that's the most important takeaway of all, to be honest.
Tony, I'm going to quickly come back to you. Thank you, Mervyn, and thank you for mentioning nuclear, my favorite, but we won't go there. Tony, just can you tell us where we can find more out about the exhibition that's up and coming?
Certainly. So if you, sorry, let me just, I've lost your faces. There we are. If you just go on to the website, which is keyenergy.it, and it'll give you all the information you need, or you can contact me, Tony Lambert. So that's, you'll see everything there to do with the audience, and the content, and really the topics, the main topics, such as solar, wind, city sustainability, energy efficiency, and so on. So you'll see all those topics there. But if you start with keyenergy.it, that's the best place, or contact me, and
Brilliant.
I'm happy to give
Or-
any information.
Or if you want to support ESTA stand or be around, then
Yes.
equally contact me, and I'm happy
Yep.
to. I could do, apart from the girl who's agreed to be there as well. I'm very happy. I'd be very happy indeed to have every single ESTA member represented at that show. In my dreams, potentially, but I have ambition.
Yep.
I'm not
Thank
going
you,
to let
Bernie, for
anyone
that.
stifle that ambition.
Thank you. So I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone to
Thank you.
join us on this call. Been absolute. I think we need part 2. Maybe we'll have another interview after the event. We can
Okay.
talk about some other stuff. There's lots of content here, I've really enjoyed today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lastly, you and your families stay safe in these times.
You
You
too.
too, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for.
Thank you.
for
Thanks,
hosting.
everyone.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.